I stood frozen in this dim hallway of my apartment building, my hand still gripping the doorknob that refused to turn. It was past 11 at night, and I had just finished another grueling 14-hour shift at the hospital where I worked as a senior nurse. My feet ached, my scrubs smelled like disinfectant and exhaustion, and all I wanted was to collapse on my couch with a cup of tea. But the key wouldn't work. My heart began to pound as I tried again, jiggling the key, pushing harder against the door. Nothing. That was when I noticed it. A white envelope taped to my door, my name scrawled across it in handwriting I knew too well. My mother's handwriting. With trembling fingers, I tore it open. The words on the page felt like a physical blow to my chest. "We changed the locks. You have no home here anymore. Get out. Don't bother calling." Below the message was a crude drawing of a house with a big X through it, and a smiley face that looked more like a sneer. My own family. My own blood. They had locked me out of the home I had paid for. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't bang on the door demanding to be let in. Instead, something cold and sharp crystallized in my chest. A voice in my head, calm and decisive, said clearly, "They think they can humiliate me. I'll show them what it means to pay the price." Before I continue, if you're enjoying this story of justice and standing up for yourself, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more stories like this, and drop a comment below, telling me what you would do in this situation. Your support means everything. Now let me take you back to the beginning, because this nightmare didn't start tonight. It started 26 years ago when I was born into the Evans family in a modest suburban home in Bellevue, Washington. I came into this world on a rainy October morning, the first child of Richard and Susan Evans. My father worked as a middle manager at a tech company, and my mother was a part-time bookkeeper. By all accounts, they were thrilled to have me. The photo albums from my early years show a happy baby, a smiling toddler, a little girl who seemed to be the center of her parents' universe. But those albums stop abruptly when I turned 6 years old. That's when everything changed. That's when Chloe was born. I remember the day my parents brought her home from the hospital. I had been so excited to be a big sister. I had helped my mother decorate the nursery, picking out yellow curtains with little ducks on them because we didn't know if the baby would be a boy or a girl. I had practiced being gentle with my dolls, preparing to help take care of my new sibling. I thought it would be wonderful. The first few weeks were normal. Chloe was tiny and pink and cried a lot, but I loved her. I would stand by her crib and sing to her the songs my mother had sung to me. I would help fetch diapers and hold her bottle. I was proud to be the big sister, but then something shifted. It was subtle at first. My mother started asking me to play quietly because Chloe needed to sleep. My father stopped reading me bedtime stories because he was too tired from helping with the baby. When I asked if I could hold Chloe, my mother would say, "Not right now, sweetie. She's very delicate. You might hurt her accidentally." By the time I was 7 and Chloe was 1, the dynamic had fully established itself. I was the sturdy one, the independent one, the one who didn't need as much attention. Chloe was fragile, special, required constant care and supervision. My parents never explicitly said I was less important, but the message came through in 1,000 small ways. When I fell off my bike and scraped my knee badly enough that it bled through my jeans, my mother cleaned it up quickly and told me to be more careful. When Chloe got a tiny scratch from a rose bush, my mother called the pediatrician and kept her home from daycare for 2 days to monitor it. When I got straight A's on my second-grade report card, my father said, "Good job, Maya. We expect you to keep it up." When Chloe learned to count to 10 at age 3, they threw a celebration party and invited the whole family. I didn't understand it then, but I felt it. The difference. The distance. And I responded the way many children do when they feel their parents' love becoming conditional. I tried harder. I became more helpful, more responsible, more independent. If I couldn't be the one they worried about, I would be the one they could rely on. By the time I was 10, I was making my own breakfast, packing my own lunch, and walking myself to school. Chloe, at age 4, still needed my mother to do everything for her. I told myself it was because I was mature for my age. Looking back, I realize my parents simply expected it of me while babying my sister. The real turning point came the summer I turned 14. That was the summer my parents decided to do a major renovation on our house. They wanted to add a second story with 2 new bedrooms and a bathroom. It was an ambitious project, and they hired contractors to do the main construction work. But there was a lot of painting cleanup and finishing work that needed to be done, and my father decided it would be a good learning experience for me to help. I remember that summer with brutal clarity. While other 14-year-olds went to camp or the pool, I spent 10 hours a day on a ladder in 90-degree heat painting our entire house. My father went to work. My mother stayed inside the air-conditioned house with Chloe, who took swimming lessons and art classes. I worked alone outside from dawn until dusk, scraping old paint until my hands bled, my arms shaking from holding the roller overhead for hours. The ladder left deep bruises on my thighs. Paint dried in my hair because I couldn't waste time showering during lunch. My shoulders blistered and peeled 3 times that summer despite the sunscreen. I ate PB&J sandwiches standing up because sitting down made it harder to get back up. Some days I was so dehydrated I felt dizzy, but asking to come inside felt like admitting weakness. Through the window I could see Chloe having lemonade and cookies while showing Mom her watercolors. I told myself it would be worth it when my parents saw what I'd accomplished, when they finally told me they were proud, when they saw how hard I'd worked for them. When I finished painting the entire house after 6 weeks of work, my father inspected it critically and said, "You missed some spots on the north side. You'll need to touch those up tomorrow." My mother added, "And you made such a mess of your clothes. That paint will never come out. Those were expensive jeans." There was no praise, no acknowledgement of how hard I had worked, just criticism and complaints about the minor imperfections. Meanwhile, Chloe showed them the watercolor painting she had made in art class, a messy, abstract blob of colors, and they hung it on the refrigerator with pride. "You're so artistic, Chloe. We should get you private lessons. You could be a real painter someday." I went up to my room that night and cried for the first time in years, not because of the work, not because of the lack of praise, but because I was starting to understand that no matter what I did, it would never be enough. I would never be the special one. I would never be the one they celebrated. But I was 14, and I still believed that if I just worked harder, proved myself more, they would eventually see my value. So I kept trying. High school was a continuation of the same pattern, but with higher stakes. I had to maintain perfect grades because I wanted to get into a good college. I needed scholarships because my parents had made it clear that while they were saving for Chloe's education, they expected me to fund my own. "You're so smart and capable, Maya," my mother would say. "You'll have no problem getting scholarships. Chloe isn't as academically gifted, so we need to make sure we can afford to send her to a good school." I joined every extracurricular activity that might look good on a college application: student government, debate team, volunteer work at the local hospital, which is where I discovered my passion for nursing. I worked a part-time job at a grocery store on weekends to save money. I barely slept. I had no social life. I went to exactly 2 school dances in 4 years, and both times I left early because I had to work the next morning. Chloe, meanwhile, tried out for the cheerleading squad and didn't make it, so my parents hired a private coach to help her improve. She wanted to learn piano, so they bought a beautiful baby grand and paid for weekly lessons with the best teacher in town. She decided she didn't like piano after a year, so they let her switch to guitar. Then photography. Then tennis. My parents funded every whim, every interest, every fleeting hobby. When I asked if I could take a ceramics class that cost $200, my mother said, "Maya, you know money is tight right now, maybe next semester." The next week, they bought Chloe a $1,500 camera because she had decided she wanted to be a photographer. I got into the University of Washington's nursing program with a partial scholarship that covered 60% of tuition. I was thrilled. It was a prestigious program, and I would be able to live at home and commute to save money on housing. When I told my parents, they seemed pleased but distracted. That same week, Chloe had gotten her acceptance letter to a private arts college in California that cost $60,000 a year. They were busy figuring out how to finance her education. I moved out 3 months before starting college. I couldn't live at home anymore and watch them pour everything into Chloe while I scraped by. I found a tiny studio apartment near campus, a 4th-floor walk-up with no air conditioning and questionable plumbing, but it was mine. I worked 3 jobs that summer to save money for rent and expenses. I cashiered at a grocery store in the mornings, waited tables at a diner in the afternoons, and cleaned office buildings at night. I barely saw my family that summer, and honestly, I didn't miss them. College was brutal. I was taking a full course load of demanding science and nursing classes while working 30 hours a week to pay for the portion of tuition my scholarship didn't cover, plus rent, food transportation, and textbooks. I lived on ramen noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, and the free coffee at the hospital where I did my clinical rotations. I studied on the bus in the cafeteria between shifts late into the night when my eyes burned with exhaustion. But I made it. I graduated with a 3.8 GPA and job offers from 3 different hospitals. I accepted a position at Seattle General Hospital in their emergency department. The starting salary was $68,000 a year, which felt like a fortune after years of poverty. I found a slightly better apartment, nothing fancy, but it had heat and hot water that actually worked. I bought myself a used car. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe. That sense of peace lasted exactly 4 months. It was a Tuesday evening in January when my mother called. I had just gotten home from a particularly rough shift in the ER. We had lost a patient, a young woman who had been in a car accident, and I was emotionally drained. I almost didn't answer the phone, but something made me pick up. "Maya, honey." My mother's voice was shaky, tearful. "I'm so sorry to bother you. I know you're probably tired from work, but we have a bit of a situation, and I didn't know who else to call." My stomach tightened. "What's wrong? Is everyone okay?" "Everyone's fine physically," she said quickly. "But we're in some financial trouble. Your father's company did layoffs last month, and he was one of them. We're looking at his severance package and our savings, and we can just barely make ends meet, but the mortgage payment is due next week, and we're $3,000 short. I know it's a lot to ask, but is there any way you could help us? Just this once, we'll pay you back as soon as your father finds a new job." I didn't hesitate. They were my parents. My father had lost his job. Of course I would help. I transferred the money that night. 2 weeks later, my mother called again. The car insurance was due, and they were short another $1,200. Could I help? I sent the money. A month after that, there was a problem with the water heater. $2,000 for a new one. I sent it. Then it was property taxes. $4,000. I sent it. Then, Chloe's college tuition payment was due, and my father's severance was running out. $8,000. I sent it. Each time, my mother promised they would pay me back. Each time, she thanked me profusely and told me what a blessing I was, how I was saving the family. Each time, I believed her. I started keeping a small notebook where I wrote down what I sent and when, just so I could keep track. I wasn't worried about getting paid back immediately. I understood that financial hardship took time to recover from. I just wanted to know the running total so that when my father got a new job, we could work out a reasonable repayment plan. 6 months into this arrangement, I stopped by the house to drop off another check. My mother had called asking for help with some home repairs, $5,000 this time. I had the day off and thought I would deliver it in person and maybe have lunch with my family. I hadn't seen them much since the financial problems started, and I missed them despite everything. When I pulled up to the house, I noticed that the driveway had been freshly repaved. That was odd. Repaving a driveway cost several $1,000s, and they were supposed to be in financial crisis. I brushed it off, thinking maybe they had scraped together money from somewhere, or maybe it was something their homeowner's insurance covered. I rang the doorbell, and my mother answered with a bright smile. "Maya, what a lovely surprise! Come in, come in." I stepped inside and immediately noticed changes. New furniture in the living room, a large flat-screen TV that definitely wasn't there before, fresh paint on the walls. "Mom," I said slowly, "did you redecorate?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, just a few little updates. We got some good deals. You know how your father is always finding bargains." I wanted to ask how they could afford any of this when they supposedly couldn't make the mortgage payment, but I didn't want to seem accusatory. I handed her the check. "Here's the $5,000 for the repairs." "You are an angel," she said, hugging me tight. "We don't know what we would do without you." Chloe emerged from her bedroom then, and I did a double take. She was wearing designer jeans I recognized from a boutique in downtown Seattle, easily $300. Her hair had been professionally colored with expensive highlights. She was carrying a new iPhone, the latest model. "Hey, Maya," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. "How's school?" "It's good. I'm actually taking a semester off. I needed a break. College is so stressful. But I'm doing a lot of art projects at home." A semester off, which meant my parents weren't paying her tuition this semester yet. They still needed money from me for basic expenses. Something wasn't adding up. I stayed for lunch watching and listening carefully. My father was home, which surprised me because it was a weekday afternoon. When I asked about his job search, he said vaguely that he was exploring options and taking his time to find the right fit. He didn't seem particularly stressed or worried. In fact, he seemed more relaxed than I had seen him in years. After lunch, I excused myself to use the bathroom. On my way back, I passed my father's office. The door was ajar, and I glanced in out of habit. His computer screen was on, showing his email inbox. I should have kept walking. I should have respected his privacy. But something made me pause. One of the emails had the subject line, "Investment Portfolio Update." I could see the first line of the preview text. "Your portfolio has grown by 12% this quarter, adding approximately $18,000 to your total holdings. Investment portfolio. Growing by $18,000 in a quarter. When they supposedly couldn't afford their mortgage payment, I felt cold. I walked back to the living room in a daze, made some excuse about needing to get back home, and left as quickly as I could without arousing suspicion. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what I had seen. The new driveway, the new furniture, the new TV. Chloe's expensive clothes, my father's relaxed demeanor, that email about investment growth. None of it made sense if they were truly in financial distress. Unless they weren't in financial distress at all. Unless I was being lied to. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew with every new observation. My mother's weekly manicures, my father's Thursday golf games at the country club, Chloe's 2-week Hawaii vacation. These weren't the habits of a family facing foreclosure. I started documenting everything, every request, every dollar, every broken promise. The pattern was relentless. Utility bills, groceries, car repairs, medical bills, home insurance, Chloe's maxed out credit cards, plane tickets so they could visit Chloe at college. Each demand came with a crisis story. Each time I wired the money within hours. 1 year later, I had sent them $73,000. My life had become a grim equation. I worked 60-hour weeks and lived on $15 a day. I wore scrubs with holes in them because new ones cost $40 I didn't have. I skipped meals regularly, telling myself I wasn't hungry. My coworkers invited me out for drinks, dinners, weekend trips. I always said no. I couldn't afford a $12 cocktail when my parents needed $3,000 for property taxes. My studio apartment had no heat, so I slept in my winter coat during cold months to save on the electric bill. I walked 40 minutes to work instead of taking the bus to save $3 a day. That was $90 a month. $90 I could send home. Meanwhile, through social media, I watched Chloe post photos from expensive restaurants, designer shopping bags, weekend spa trips, all funded by my emptying bank account while I ate 79-cent ramen and wondered if I could afford to replace my broken phone or if that $200 should go to my family instead. I had become a human ATM and they had no intention of stopping. My coworkers noticed. One of my closest friends at the hospital, Lena Rodriguez, pulled me aside one day after a shift. "Maya, are you okay? You look exhausted and you've been really stressed lately. Is everything all right?" I brushed it off. "I'm fine, just tired. You know how it is." She looked at me with concern. "It's more than that. You used to talk about wanting to travel, about saving up for a down payment on a condo. Now you work double shifts constantly and you still seem broke. What's going on?" I almost told her. I almost broke down and explained everything. But loyalty to my family, that deeply ingrained sense that you don't air your family's dirty laundry to outsiders, stopped me. "It's complicated," I said. "Family stuff, but I'm handling it." Lena didn't push, but I could see she wasn't convinced. "Okay," she said slowly. "But if you ever need to talk, I'm here. Always." 2 months later, my father called me directly, which was unusual. Normally, my mother was the one who made the requests. "Maya," he said, his voice grave. "I need to talk to you about something serious. Can you come by the house this weekend?" My heart raced. "Is everyone okay? Is someone sick?" "Everyone's healthy," he assured me. "But there's a financial matter we need to discuss in person. It's important." I agreed to come over on Saturday afternoon. I spent the entire week anxious and worried. What could be so serious that it required an in-person conversation? Had things gotten worse? Were they going to lose the house? When I arrived on Saturday, both my parents were waiting in the living room. They looked somber. My mother's eyes were red like she had been crying. My father gestured for me to sit down. "Maya," he began, "we need to talk about the house. As you know, we've been struggling financially since I lost my job. We've been falling further and further behind on the mortgage despite all your generous help. We've tried to keep this from you because we didn't want to worry you, but we're facing foreclosure." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "Foreclosure? But I've been sending you money for the mortgage every month. How is that possible?" My mother spoke up, her voice trembling. "The payments you've been sending have helped, but they're not enough to cover the full amount. We're still short each month, and the arrears have piled up. The bank has sent us a final notice. We have 60 days to pay $50,000 or they'll take the house." $50,000. The number echoed in my head. I had already given them over $40,000 in the past year. Now they needed $50,000 more. "I don't have $50,000, I said numbly. "We know," my father said, "and we're not asking you to give it to us, but we have a proposal. If you could take out a personal loan for that amount, we could use it to save the house. Then, once the house is secure and I find a good job, we'll make the loan payments for you. You wouldn't have to pay anything. We just need you to take out the loan because our credit is too damaged right now to qualify." I sat there stunned. They wanted me to take on $50,000 in debt for them. Debt that would be in my name that would affect my credit. That would be my legal responsibility if they couldn't make the payments. "I don't know," I said slowly. "That's a lot of debt. What if you can't make the payments? I'd be on the hook for it." My father's expression hardened slightly. "Maya, this is our family home we're talking about. The house you grew up in, where all your childhood memories are, where your mother and I planned to grow old, where Chloe still lives. You would let the bank take that away over money." "It's not about the money," I protested. "It's about the risk. What if something goes wrong?" My mother started crying harder. "I can't believe this. Our own daughter would stand by and watch us lose everything. After everything we've done for you. We raised you. We fed you. We put a roof over your head for 18 years, and you can't help us when we really need it." The guilt crashed over me like a wave. "That's not fair. I've been helping. I've sent you over $40,000 in the past year." "And we're grateful," my father said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But clearly it wasn't enough. We need more help, and you're in a position to provide it, unless you don't care about your family." I left that day without agreeing to anything, but the pressure was immense. They called me every day for the next week, my mother crying, my father alternating between anger and guilt-tripping, Chloe texting me about how scared she was of being homeless. I consulted with a financial advisor at my bank, presenting the situation hypothetically. The advisor was blunt. "If you take out a personal loan for someone else and they can't or won't make the payments, you'll be legally responsible for the full amount plus interest. It will destroy your credit and possibly lead to wage garnishment. I would strongly advise against it unless you're absolutely certain the other party will uphold their end of the agreement. And even then, I'd want everything in writing with legal contracts." I asked my parents if they would be willing to sign a legal contract agreeing to make the loan payments and putting my name on the house deed as partial owner in exchange for the loan. My father was insulted. "You want contracts and legal documents between family. That's offensive, Maya. That shows you don't trust us." In the end, I didn't take out the loan. I told them I couldn't do it, that the risk was too great, that I was sorry, but I had to protect my own financial future. The conversation did not go well. My father called me selfish. My mother said I was heartless. Chloe sent me a long text about how I was abandoning the family, but surprisingly, they didn't lose the house. The foreclosure deadline came and went, and when I drove by a month later, they were still living there. When I asked my mother about it, she said vaguely that they had worked something out with the bank. No details, no explanation of where they got the $50,000 they supposedly needed. That was when my suspicions turned into certainty. They had lied about the foreclosure. It had been a manipulation tactic to get me to take out the loan. The question was, what else had they lied about? I started investigating in earnest. I created detailed spreadsheets of every amount I had sent them and when. I went back through my bank statements for the entire year and documented every transfer. I saved screenshots of every text message conversation, every email thread. I backed everything up to cloud storage. Then I did something that felt both necessary and terrible. I used my mother's birthday as a password guess and managed to access her email account. I know it was a violation of privacy. I know it was wrong, but I needed to know the truth. What I found made me sick. There were emails between my parents discussing their financial situation. Not only was my father not unemployed, he had started a new job 3 months after claiming to be laid off, a job that paid more than his previous position. There were bank statements attached to emails showing substantial savings accounts, investment portfolios, certificates of deposit. They had over $200,000 in liquid assets. There were emails to Chloe about paying for her spring break trip to Cancun, her new car, her credit card shopping sprees. There were receipts for expensive dinners, luxury purchases, a planned cruise to Alaska, and there were emails between my parents discussing me. I sat at my laptop, hands shaking as I read message after message. From my father to my mother. Maya sent another $5,000. That makes the renovation fund fully covered. We can start the kitchen remodel next week. From my mother to my father. I feel a little guilty taking so much from her. Maybe we should slow down. From my father to my mother. Why, she's making good money and she clearly wants to help. Besides, she's so desperate for our approval that she'll give us whatever we ask for. We might as well take advantage of it while we can. I read that line over and over. She's so desperate for our approval that she'll give us whatever we ask for. We might as well take advantage of it while we can. There were other emails, plans to sell the house in a few years and downsize, discussions about retirement, debates about how much of the house sale proceeds would go to Chloe. My name was never mentioned as a beneficiary, despite the fact that I had paid a significant portion of their mortgage for over a year. One email thread made me physically ill. My mother had asked my father if they should put my name on the house deed since I had contributed so much. His response, absolutely not. That money was given freely without any written agreements. Legally, it's all gifts. She has no claim to the house. If we put her on the deed, we'd have to give her a share when we sell. She makes good money as a nurse. She'll be fine. Chloe needs the inheritance more. My mother had replied, I suppose you're right. Maya has always been so self-sufficient, and Chloe does need more support. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness of my apartment, feeling something inside me break and then harden into something else, something cold and sharp. They had been lying to me for over a year, lying about my father's job, lying about foreclosure, lying about needing help. They had been systematically extracting money from me while living comfortably on savings and investments they had hidden from me. They had laughed about manipulating me. They had explicitly stated they would never give me any ownership of the house I had helped them keep. And they thought I was too desperate for approval, too docile, too gullible to ever do anything about it. They were wrong. I spent the next 3 days going through everything methodically. I downloaded copies of all their emails and saved them to multiple backup drives. I gathered every bank statement, every text message, every voicemail. I calculated the exact total I had sent them, $103,000 over 18 months. Then I called Lena and asked if we could meet for coffee. When we sat down, I told her everything. Every detail, every lie, every manipulation. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker and more furious as the story unfolded. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. Then she said, Maya, what they did to you is abuse. Financial abuse, emotional abuse. And it's probably actionable legally. You need to talk to a lawyer. I can't sue my own family, I said automatically. That would destroy any relationship we have left. Lena looked at me incredulously. What relationship? The relationship where they lie to you and steal your money. The relationship where they laugh about manipulating you behind your back. That relationship is already destroyed, Maya. They destroyed it. You're just finally seeing it clearly. She pulled out her phone. I have a cousin who's a lawyer. He specializes in family financial disputes. His name is David Miller. He's tough smart and he doesn't lose. Can I give him your number? I hesitated. This felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. If I called a lawyer, if I took legal action, there would be no going back. My family would never forgive me. But then I thought about that email. She's so desperate for our approval that she'll give us whatever we ask for. We might as well take advantage of it while we can. Yes, I said. Give him my number. David Miller called me the next day. His voice was warm but professional. Ms. Evans, my cousin Lena told me a bit about your situation. I'd like to meet with you to discuss it in more detail. Can you come to my office tomorrow? His office was in a gleaming high-rise in downtown Seattle with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Everything about it spoke of success and power. David Miller himself was a distinguished-looking man in his 50s with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to see through any pretense. I spent 2 hours walking him through everything. I showed him my spreadsheets, my documentation, my screenshots. I showed him the emails I had downloaded from my mother's account. He listened occasionally, asking clarifying questions, taking meticulous notes. When I finished, he sat back and steepled his fingers, studying me. Ms. Evans, he said slowly, what your parents did to you constitutes fraud. They made false representations about their financial status to induce you to give them money. That's textbook fraud. They also engaged in what we call financial exploitation, using your trust and your family relationship to extract money under false pretenses. Can I actually do something about it legally? I asked. Or is it just morally wrong but not illegal? He smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator. Oh, it's very much illegal. And you have something that most victims in situations like this don't have. You have documentation. Extensive documentation. You have proof of every payment. You have written promises of repayment. You have evidence of their actual financial situation showing they lied about being in distress. And you have emails where they explicitly discuss deceiving you. He leaned forward. Here's what I can do for you. I can sue your parents for fraud, breach of contract, and unjust enrichment. I can demand full repayment of the $103,000 you gave them, plus interest, plus punitive damages. I can also argue that your contributions to their mortgage payments give you an equitable interest in the property, meaning you have a claim to partial ownership, even though your name isn't on the deed. Washington courts have upheld such claims before when there's clear evidence of financial contribution with the expectation of future ownership. What would that mean practically? I asked. It means I can potentially force them to either put your name on the deed with a significant ownership percentage or force the sale of the house with you receiving a portion of the proceeds. The exact percentage would depend on various factors, but given that you've paid a significant portion of their mortgage and made substantial improvements to the property, I think we could argue for anywhere from 30 to 50% ownership. 50%, half their house, the house they had planned to sell and give all the proceeds to Chloe. They'll fight it, I said quietly. They'll hate me. The whole family will hate me. David's expression softened slightly. Ms. Evans, Maya. May I call you Maya? I nodded. Maya, I've been practicing family law for 27 years. I've seen cases like this before, and I'm going to tell you something important. The people who exploit your love and trust, who lie to you and manipulate you and laugh about doing it behind your back, those people don't love you. Not really. They love what you can do for them. When you stop being useful, their affection will disappear. Your family has already shown you who they are. They will never respect you as long as you allow yourself to be a doormat. The question is not whether they'll hate you for standing up for yourself. The question is whether you're willing to keep sacrificing yourself for people who see you as nothing more than an ATM machine. I thought about all the years of being treated as the lesser child. All the times I had worked myself to exhaustion while Chloe was pampered and praised. All the money I had given thinking I was helping my family only to discover it was funding their luxury lifestyle while I ate ramen. All the lies, all the manipulation. Do it, I said. "File the lawsuit." He nodded approvingly. "Before we proceed, I need to be clear about something. The emails you accessed from your mother's account, those won't be admissible in court since you obtained them without authorization. However, they're extremely useful for our strategy because they tell us exactly what the other side is thinking. And everything else, you have all the bank records and text messages and voicemails, that's all perfectly admissible. You have a very strong case." We spent the next hour going over the details of the lawsuit. I signed a retainer agreement. David assured me that based on the strength of my case, he was confident we would either win a substantial settlement or prevail in court. 2 weeks later, my parents received a formal legal notice. They were being sued by their daughter Maya Catherine Evans for fraud, financial exploitation, breach of contract, and unjust enrichment in the amount of $103,000 plus interest and damages. The lawsuit also included a claim for partial ownership of their property based on unjust enrichment theory. My father called me 37 times that day. 37 times. I didn't answer. My mother sent me dozens of text messages ranging from rage to tears to threats. I didn't respond. Chloe posted on social media about ungrateful family members who stabbed their own parents in the back over money. I didn't engage. The only communication I allowed was through David Miller. My parents hired their own lawyer, a man named Robert Chin, who had a reputation as a tough litigator. The first thing he did was send a response to our lawsuit, claiming that all money I had given my parents was gifts freely given with no expectation of repayment, and that I had no claim whatsoever to their property. David had expected this. Standard defense tactic, he told me. But we have text messages and emails where they explicitly promised to repay you. That defeats the gift argument. Let's move forward with discovery. Discovery is the legal process where both sides have to turn over relevant documents and information. David subpoenaed my parents' bank records, tax returns, employment records, everything. What we found was even worse than I had imagined. Not only had my father not been unemployed, he had actually gotten a promotion and a raise 6 months into the period when they were claiming financial hardship. Their income had gone up, not down. The bank statements showed regular, substantial deposits into savings accounts, investment accounts, and retirement funds. They had taken 2 expensive vacations during the time they were supposedly facing foreclosure. My mother had purchased over $15,000 worth of jewelry. David assembled all of this into a devastating brief. "Your parents committed systematic fraud," he told me. "They lied about unemployment, about foreclosure, about needing emergency funds, all while maintaining substantial wealth and living a comfortable lifestyle. This isn't a gray area. This is clear-cut deception for financial gain." The mediation was scheduled for 3 months after I filed the lawsuit. During those 3 months, my parents tried everything to get me to drop it. They had Chloe call me crying. They had my aunt and uncle, my mother's brother and his wife, call me to say I was tearing the family apart. They had their pastor from the church they occasionally attended reach out to me about the importance of forgiveness and family unity. I changed my phone number and gave it only to Lena David and a few trusted coworkers. The messages that did get through to me through social media or through mutual acquaintances followed a pattern. First, there was rage. How dare I sue my own parents? I was ungrateful, selfish, cruel. Then there were guilt trips. I was destroying the family. I was breaking my mother's heart. My father's health was suffering from the stress. Then there were threats. They would make sure I was written out of the will. They would tell everyone what a terrible daughter I was. They would ruin my reputation. None of it worked. I had made my decision, and I was seeing it through. The day of the mediation arrived. It was a cold, gray Friday in November. I wore a charcoal gray suit that Lena had helped me pick out something that made me look professional and serious. I met David at his office and we walked through our strategy one more time. "Remember," he said, "don't let them get to you emotionally. Don't respond to personal attacks. Stay calm and factual. We have truth and evidence on our side. That's more powerful than anything they can say." The mediation took place in a conference room at a neutral law office downtown. The room was deliberately impersonal with beige walls, a long table, uncomfortable chairs, and harsh fluorescent lighting. David and I arrived first. I sat down and arranged my copies of the documents in front of me, taking deep breaths to steady myself. Then my parents arrived. I barely recognized them. My father looked like he had aged 10 years. His face was drawn and gray with deep shadows under his eyes. My mother's hair had gone noticeably grayer, and she had lost weight. She looked fragile in a way I had never seen before. Chloe was with them looking young and scared, staying close to our mother's side. They came in with their lawyer Robert Chin, a sharply dressed man in an expensive suit. The four of them sat down across from us. For a long moment nobody spoke. My father stared at me with an expression of betrayal and rage. My mother's eyes were red and swollen. Chloe wouldn't meet my eyes. The mediator, a calm-voiced woman named Patricia Haynes, opened the meeting. We're here today to see if we can reach a resolution to the dispute between Ms. Maya Evans and her parents, Richard and Susan Evans, along with her sister, Chloe Evans. Let's begin with opening statements. Mr. Miller. David stood his presence commanding. Thank you. My client, Ms. Evans, gave her parents over $100,000 over an 18-month period based on representations that they were in severe financial distress. These representations were false. During this entire period, her parents maintained substantial savings, made luxury purchases, and took expensive vacations. They lied about unemployment. They lied about facing foreclosure. They deliberately deceived their daughter to extract money from her while she lived in poverty to help them. This isn't a family disagreement. This is fraud, and we have extensive documentation to prove every element of our case. He sat down. Robert Chin stood up, adjusting his glasses. My clients strongly dispute these characterizations. The money given by Ms. Evans was voluntary. She was never forced or coerced. The funds were gifts from a daughter to her parents given out of love and family obligation. While there may have been some communication about repayment, these were not legal contracts. They were casual family discussions. My clients have no legal obligation to repay what were essentially gifts. Furthermore, Ms. Evans has no claim to the family home. Her name is not on the deed. She has never lived there as an adult. Her attempt to claim ownership is without merit. Patricia nodded. Thank you both. Now I'd like to hear directly from the parties. Ms. Evans, would you like to speak? I stood up slowly, my legs feeling shaky but my voice steady. I don't need to say much. The evidence speaks for itself. I gestured to the stack of documents in front of me. Bank statements showing every dollar I sent, text messages with promises to repay me, emails asking for emergency funds, phone records showing dozens of calls asking for money, and bank statements from my parents showing they were never in the financial distress they claimed. I looked directly at my father for the first time. You told me you lost your job. You were working the entire time. You told me you were facing foreclosure. You had over $200,000 in savings. You told me you needed emergency help. You were taking vacations and buying jewelry and remodeling your kitchen with my money. My voice grew colder. But the worst part wasn't the lying. The worst part was the email where you discussed how desperate I was for your approval and how you might as well take advantage of it while you could. You didn't see me as your daughter. You saw me as a resource to be exploited. My mother let out a sob. Maya, please. We made mistakes. We shouldn't have lied. But we're still your parents. We still love you. Can't we work this out as a family? I looked at her and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just a cold, empty space where my love for them used to be. You stopped being my family when you changed the locks on my home and left that note telling me I had nowhere to go. You stopped being my family when you planned to sell the house I helped you keep and give me nothing. You stopped being my family when you laughed about manipulating me. This isn't about working things out. This is about justice. My father stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Justice. You want to talk about justice. We raised you, we fed you, clothed, you put a roof over your head for 18 years, and this is how you repay us by dragging us into court, by trying to take our home. David stood up as well, his voice sharp. Mr. Evans, please sit down. This kind of outburst is not productive. But my father wasn't done. She was always ungrateful, always thinking she was better than everyone else. We should have known she would turn on us. That's enough, Patricia said firmly. Mr. Evans, sit down or I'll end this mediation right now. He sat breathing heavily, his face red with fury. David opened his briefcase calmly. "Let's look at some evidence, shall we?" He pulled out a document and slid it across the table. "This is Ms. Evans's bank statement from March of last year, showing a balance of $400 after she sent her parents $3,000 for their supposed mortgage payment. She was living on ramen noodles and working double shifts." He slid another document across. "This is Mr. and Mrs. Evans's bank statement from the same month, showing deposits into a vacation fund for a cruise to Alaska costing $8,000. Another document. "This is a receipt for jewelry purchased by Mrs. Evans for $12,000 in April." Another. "This is documentation of a new BMW purchased for Chloe in May, costing $42,000. He kept sliding documents across each one, a damning piece of evidence. Credit card statements showing luxury purchases, restaurant receipts, spa treatments, golf club memberships, all during the period when you were telling your daughter you couldn't afford basic necessities. He pulled out a thick folder. "And here are copies of text messages. Ms. Evans saved all of them. Let me read a few examples." He put on his reading glasses. "March 15th from Susan Evans, Maya emergency. Water heater broke. Need $2,000 by tomorrow or we'll have no hot water. Please help." That same day, Susan Evans made a $1,500 purchase at Nordstrom. "April 3rd from Richard Evans, property taxes due. $4,000. We're completely tapped out. Can you help?" The previous day, Richard Evans deposited $5,000 into a retirement account. He continued reading message after message, each one highlighting the gap between what my parents were telling me and what they were actually doing. By the end, even Robert Chin looked uncomfortable. Patricia looked at my parents with barely concealed distaste. "Mr. and Mrs. Evans, this evidence is extremely damaging to your case. You clearly misrepresented your financial situation to your daughter in order to obtain money from her." My mother was crying openly now. "We didn't mean for it to go this far. It started with just one request and then it became a pattern. We knew Maya made good money and it was easier to ask her than to dip into our savings. We justified it by telling ourselves we had raised her and this was payback, but we never meant to hurt her." "You absolutely meant to hurt me," I said quietly. "You meant to exploit me. The only thing you didn't mean to do was get caught." Robert Chin cleared his throat. "Perhaps we could discuss potential settlement terms. Clearly there are some issues that need to be resolved and a trial would be expensive for both parties." David nodded. "We're willing to discuss settlement. Here are our terms. 1 full repayment of the $103,000 Ms. Evans gave to her parents, plus 18 months of interest at 6%, which brings the total to approximately $112,000. 2 transfer of 40% ownership of the house to Ms. Evans in recognition of her substantial contributions to the mortgage and property improvements. Or alternatively immediate sale of the property with Ms. Evans receiving 40% of the net proceeds after all expenses." Robert Chin shook his head. "That's not reasonable. We might discuss some repayment, but 40% of the house is far too much." "Then we'll see you in court," David said simply. "And when we do, we'll be asking for 50% plus punitive damages plus attorney's fees. The evidence is overwhelming. Your clients committed fraud. Do you really want a judge to see all of this?" There was a long silence. Robert leaned over and whispered with my parents for several minutes. Finally, he straightened up. "We need time to consider our options. Can we take a break?" Patricia nodded. "Let's reconvene in 1 hour." David and I left the room and went to a small cafe down the street. "You did well in there," he told me. "You stayed calm and factual. That's exactly what we needed." "Do you think they'll settle?" I asked. "I think they'll have to," he said. "The evidence is too strong. If this goes to trial, they'll lose. They know it, and more importantly, their lawyer knows it. Robert Chin is a good attorney. He's not going to advise them to fight a losing battle." We went back after an hour. My parents looked defeated. My mother could barely look at me. My father stared at the table. Chloe was crying quietly. Robert spoke. "My clients are prepared to offer a settlement. They will repay $75,000 to Ms. Evans over a period of 5 years. They will also agree to transfer 20% ownership of the property to Ms. Evans." David didn't hesitate. "Not acceptable. Full repayment of $112,000 within 90 days and 40% ownership." Or we go to trial. They don't have that much liquid capital, Robert said. Then they can take out a home equity loan, David replied. Or sell the house. Or liquidate some of their substantial savings and investments, the same savings they claimed didn't exist when they were lying to Ms. Evans. Another whispered conversation. Then Robert said, 30% ownership and full repayment of principal $103,000 within 6 months. That's our final offer. David looked at me. What do you think? I thought about it. 30% ownership would give me significant equity in the house. The full repayment would return all my money, even if not the interest. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was substantial justice. I want them out of the house, I said. I want the house sold within 6 months. I'll take my 30% of the proceeds plus the $103,000 repayment. They can have what's left. Robert shook his head. They're not going to agree to sell. Then we have no deal, I said flatly. Either they agree to sell the house so I can get my money and my share, or we go to court and let a judge decide. Given what David said about asking for 50% and punitive damages, I think they should seriously consider this offer. More whispering. Finally, my father spoke directly to me for the first time. You really want us to lose our home, the house we've lived in for 30 years, the house where you grew up? The house I paid for, I corrected him. The house you were planning to sell anyway and keep all the money. I'm just accelerating your timeline and making sure I get what I'm owed. My mother tried one last time. Maya, please. Can't we find another way? Selling the house will devastate us. All our memories are there. Your father and I are too old to start over. You should have thought about that before you lied to me, I said. You made your choices. Now you live with the consequences. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. Another long silence. Then finally my father nodded once a sharp, bitter gesture. We'll take it, Robert said. Repayment of $103,000 within 30 days, sale of the house within 6 months, Ms. Evans to receive 30% of the net proceeds. We'll draft the settlement agreement. Patricia nodded. Good. I'll have the paperwork prepared for signatures. This mediation is concluded. And just like that, it was over. I stood up, gathered my documents, and walked out without looking back at my family. David and I celebrated with coffee at a nice cafe near his office. You just won, he told me. You stood up for yourself, you fought for what was right, and you won. I'm proud of you. I didn't feel victorious, I felt empty, but also, strangely, I felt free. The settlement was finalized 2 weeks later. My parents transferred $103,000 to my account within 30 days as agreed. The house went on the market immediately after that. Selling the house turned out to be easier than expected. The real estate market in Seattle was hot, and the house sold within 3 weeks for $680,000. After paying off the remaining mortgage, realtor fees, closing costs, and other expenses, there was $500,000 left in proceeds. My 30% came to $150,000. Combined with the $103,000 I had already received in repayment, I now had $253,000. More than double what I had given them thanks to the equity I had helped build in their property. My parents received the remaining 70%, $350,000, but after their legal fees, which had been substantial, they were left with about $300,000, not enough to buy a comparable house in Seattle's expensive market. I heard through mutual acquaintances what happened next. They bought a small 2-bedroom condo in a less desirable neighborhood about 30 miles outside the city. No yard. No space for Chloe's art studio. No room for all their furniture and possessions, most of which they had to sell or put in storage. Chloe had to get her first real job as a barista at a coffee shop. Her dreams of being a full-time artist funded by our parents were over. She moved into a shared apartment with roommates, something she had never experienced before. My parents' retirement plans were shattered. The cruise they had been planning, the travel they had dreamed of, all of it went to legal fees in the settlement. My father had to push back his retirement date by at least 5 years. My mother picked up more bookkeeping clients to bring in extra income. As for me, I took my $253,000 and bought a beautiful condo in a high-rise downtown. 15th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay and the Olympic Mountains, a sleek modern kitchen with stainless steel appliances, a spacious bedroom, A building with a gym, a rooftop terrace, and a 24-hour doorman. It was mine. Completely, legally, undeniably mine. My name alone on the deed. I furnished it exactly how I wanted. I bought a comfortable couch where I could curl up and read. A real bed, a queen size, with a memory foam mattress, not the creaky full size I had been sleeping on for years. Art for the walls that I actually liked. Plants for the balcony. Everything was my choice, my taste, my decision. I cut back to a normal work schedule. No more double shifts unless I wanted them. I started taking vacations. I went to Hawaii for a week and stayed at a nice resort. I visited Lena's family in Arizona. I took a long weekend in Vancouver. I did things I had been putting off for years because I never had the time or money. I joined a book club. I took a painting class. I went to concerts and plays. I went on dates with people I met through friends or apps. Nothing serious yet, but it was nice to be open to the possibility of connection. My parents tried to contact me for months. Angry phone calls, tearful voicemails, emails that ranged from accusations to apologies to demands that I help them out of the situation I had created. I blocked their numbers. I filtered their emails to spam. I made it clear through David Miller, who remained my attorney for a while, just in case, that I wanted no contact with them. Chloe reached out after about 8 months. She sent me a long letter, handwritten, apologizing for everything. She said she hadn't realized how bad the manipulation was, that she had been spoiled and sheltered, that she was ashamed of how she had benefited from my suffering. She said she was working on being a better person, standing on her own, and she hoped someday I might be willing to talk to her. I read the letter several times. I could tell it was sincere. I could see that Chloe had done some growing up forced by circumstances to face reality for the first time in her life, but I wasn't ready to respond. Maybe someday, but not yet. The wound was still too fresh. A year passed, then 2, then 3. My life stabilized into something I had never experienced before: peace. I loved my job, but I wasn't consumed by it. I loved my home. I loved my freedom to make my own choices without constantly sacrificing for people who didn't appreciate it. I dated someone seriously for about 8 months, a software engineer named Marcus. It didn't work out long term, but it was a good relationship while it lasted. I learned what it felt like to be with someone who respected me, who valued my time and my feelings, who didn't take advantage of my generosity. My relationship with Lena deepened. She became more than a work friend. She became a true sister, the kind of family you choose rather than the kind you're born into. She was there for me through the lawsuit, through the aftermath, through the healing process. She celebrated my victories and supported me through the hard moments. I slowly built a circle of genuine friends, people who liked me for who I was, not what I could provide, people who showed up for me the way I showed up for them. It was a revelation to realize that healthy relationships were reciprocal, that I didn't have to constantly give and sacrifice to earn love. 3 years after the settlement, I was grocery shopping on a Saturday afternoon when I turned a corner and nearly ran into my mother. We both froze. She looked older, more worn. Gray hair that she no longer bothered to dye. Lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She was holding a basket with generic brand items, a far cry from the organic specialty products she used to insist on. "Maya," she said quietly. "Hi." "Hello," I replied, my voice neutral. There was an awkward pause. Then she said, "You look good. You look happy." "I am," I said simply. Another pause. "I've wanted to reach out so many times," she said, "to apologize properly, to try to explain, but I didn't think you'd want to hear from me." "You were right," I said, not unkindly, just stating a fact. Her eyes filled with tears. "We were terrible to you. I know that now. I've had a lot of time to think about everything we did, everything we said. I wish I could go back and change it all. I wish I had been a better mother to you." I looked at her, this woman who had given birth to me, raised me, and then systematically exploited me. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a distant sort of sadness for what could have been and never was. "I wish that too," I said, "but we can't change the past. We can only decide what to do with the present and future." "Is there any chance," she asked hesitantly, "that someday you might be willing to talk?" "Not now. I know it's too soon, but someday I miss you, Maya. I miss my daughter." I took a breath. Maybe someday. But it would be on very different terms than before, with clear boundaries, with honesty, with mutual respect. And I'm not ready yet. I might not be ready for a long time, if ever. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand. I'll wait, however long it takes. And Maya, I really am sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I see now what we did to you, and I'm ashamed. Thank you for saying that, I said, and I meant it. The apology didn't change the past, but it was something. We parted ways, and I finished my shopping in a daze. That night, I sat on my balcony looking out at the lights of the city, thinking about the encounter. I didn't know if I would ever have a real relationship with my family again. Part of me wanted to believe that people could change, that genuine remorse could lead to real growth. But another part of me knew that even with apologies and changed behavior, some damage is too deep to fully repair. What I did know was that I had changed. I was no longer the desperate girl seeking approval. I was no longer the doormat who would sacrifice everything for people who gave nothing in return. I had learned to value myself, to set boundaries, to demand respect, to walk away from toxicity even when it wore a familiar face. I built my life on my own terms. I filled it with people who genuinely cared about me. I made choices based on what I wanted, not what others expected from me. And for the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to be truly free. Did I regret taking legal action against my family? No, not even for a moment. They had exploited me systematically, laughed about manipulating me, and planned to cut me out entirely while keeping everything I had given them. They had forced my hand by changing the locks and trying to erase me from their lives after draining my bank account. I didn't destroy my family. They destroyed themselves. They built their comfortable lifestyle on a foundation of lies and exploitation. I simply refused to be the foundation anymore. When I stepped away, the whole structure collapsed under the weight of their own greed and dishonesty. Some people might say I was too harsh, that I should have found a way to forgive and move on without legal action. To those people, I say there's a difference between forgiveness and being a doormat. You can forgive someone and still hold them accountable. You can move on with your life and still demand justice for wrongs committed against you. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from people who hurt you, even if they're family. I learned that being strong doesn't mean being able to withstand abuse. It means having the courage to say enough and mean it. It means knowing your worth and refusing to accept less than you deserve. It means understanding that you are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. My family thought they could take my home, my money, my dignity. What they didn't realize was that in their cruelty and greed, they lost something far more valuable. They lost me. And I built something better on my own, something they could never take away because this time it truly belongs to me. So here's my question for you. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between family loyalty and self-respect? What would you do if you discovered the people you loved most had been using you all along? Would you fight for justice like I did, or would you walk away quietly? Drop your answer in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about standing up for yourself and finding your power. Your support means everything, and I love hearing your stories and perspectives. Until next time, remember, you are never obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm.